Director of South Asia. With 25 plus years of experience in the finance sector, he has previously worked with many premier institutions, one of which was Sight Life, as the Senior Director of Strategic Initiatives Asia. Sir, your enthusiasm to bring positive change in the development sector through innovation, improved processes, and introduction of new models for operations at scale gives us immense motivation. So in our panel, we have five eminent speakers. We have with us Mr. Ashwini Saxena, CEO of JSW Foundation. Mr. Saxena has been working with JSW Foundation for the last 6 years. Prior to JSW, he was the Director of Programs in Acer Foundation. With over 30 years of experience, he has also worked with many eminent organizations such as UNIDO as a national expert, International Finance Corporation as operations officer, to name a few. Next, we have with us Ms. Purvi Bhavsar, Managing Director at Pehel Foundation, Pehel Financial Services. Ms. Purvi has over 23 years of experience in the finance sector and was part of major banks such as ICICI and HDFC as senior level official. We also have with us Ms. Bonani Roy Chaudhary, Chief Operating Officer, Nab Samriddhi Finance Limited. She's a finance professional, experience in green finance and responsible lending. She has previously worked with rural communities with focus on ESG, including sustainable development projects, microfinance, and financial inclusions. She has previously worked with NABARD for the last 30 years and recently joined Nab Samriddhi Finance Limited as Chief Operating Officer in 2020. Our next speaker is Mr. Sujay Sen Gupta from McLean, India. Mr. Sujay has over 30 years of experience in the finance sector and is working currently as a managing partner and director of Acclaim India, a premier strategic consulting corporate service and corporate governance firm for global brands. And lastly, I'm excited to introduce Dr. Natasha Patel, CEO of India Sanitation Coalition. Dr. Natasha is a seasoned banker with 30 years of experience in the financial service industry in India and overseas. Through her past roles, she has built a strong business strategy agenda using a combination of subject matter expertise, a broad set of development sector and global financial service experience combined with industry and client environmental perspectives. Thank you everyone for joining us. Before deep diving into such a relevant topic, I request Mr. Manoj Gulati to give us an introduction on finance universe. Sure, over to you.
Thank you. So thank you everyone for joining in for this post-lunch session and for being brave enough to join a finance topic. Couldn't have asked for the worst combination, but I'm seeing that you guys were brave, so thank you. I've got a fantastic panel with me today. I'll be a little off the scale, off the grid in my comment. I have two intellectual Bengalis sitting on two sides who will bring in wake you up with more into, what's happening and how the sector can change. And I have two wonderful Gujaratis who are also financial institution experts. And as far as my colleague Ashwini and me, we bring the gray hair. So I think that's perfect. That's the only value addition. That's our value addition. That's why we were chosen for this job. So with that, the topic, as we talked about, was about the working and the costing and what is the issues related to financing and SDG 6. So let me set the context up. I mean, what is financing with respect to water and sanitation? There are fantastic sessions going over there. Why is this a critical conversation? So I'll begin with just throw some data just to show you a sense. One is from World Bank, and earlier it was talked about also that the assessment for the total SDG 6, in order to be achieved by 2030, the world needs $114 billion every year. Now think about it. And all the government, all the CSR funds combined together adds up to around $30 billion. So in effect, when we are sitting in 2030, we'll say we missed the bus because we had the technology, we knew what we were trying to achieve, but the financial linkages were weak. And at the right time, we didn't have the finances. Another data came up from Standard Chartered, who had done an SDG investment mapping. And their assessment was that India itself, to achieve its SDG goals, entire SDG goals, needs around $2.6 trillion. Think about it, $2.6 trillion that the government has to figure out where it's going to come from. Out of which around 190 to $200 billion is dedicated for SDG 6. Again, very big number. There are many mandates, and how do we do it? But on the good side, and I'm sure Sujoy will be happy to hear this, is that the infra, wash infra, is amongst the three top leading areas of where investment is possible. They're investment ready. And so there is an opportunity if we are able to connect into it. I'll end it with a third study, which was done recently by Dalberg and on MSME climate, and what it is. So India has got a total of around 200,000 MSMEs on WASH itself. Again, you will see that WASH is a very wide topic, but there are around 200,000 established, and the total demand for debt or loan or debt is around 20,000 crores. Out of that 20,000 crores, only 16% is getting mobilized. That means the other 84% is generally struggling with their because of financing. That is today's environment. So those are some of the glaring facts. I'll actually take an opportunity to give a little bit about water.org and what has been at the household level. So water.org is a non-profit organization, and what we do is we work with financial institutions in trying to help them convert it in WASH as a financial product. So if you can have a loan for a car, you can have a loan for an education, you can have loan for a bicycle, why can you not have, or a housing loan, why can you not have a loan for water and sanitation? We work with the financial institutions in explaining and building that product category for them. And we work with the people and showing them that their coping cost, their actual indirect cost is much more when they don't have access to sanitation and they're waiting for some charity to happen or some government to happen. And a combination of that can actually ease up their lives. I'm happy to share that today it's, globally, water.org with its partners, there are around 150 partners. They've done close to 4.8 no, 4.8 million loans have been done. Roughly, no, 48 million lives have been impacted. Roughly around, we're talking about close to $10 billion of funds have been mobilized. When I look at it from India perspective, we have done a little over 40 lakh loans with our partners. And it's today $1 billion product category. I am sure the financial people will quickly understand that WASH itself is established as a strong category. So where does this go from here as we move into this conversation? I think the key issue is that household is just one step of the process. You need to find fundings for the various MSMEs that are there. We need to find more capital to flow through to these at the base of the economic pyramid. So you need more upstream finances available. You need more infrastructure projects are coming up, your FSTP projects, your wastewater management projects. You need more intelligent stitching of finances along with what the government is willing to do it. And to top it up, we are all with the threat of climate. And if we are not applying our finances and our WASH solutions at now, it may be too late, given the climate threat that is there. So given this, I wanted to use this opportunity to use the next an hour and a half. I try to make it quick so that you can ask questions, to ask the panelists to come in from various sides of the conversation and give us insights of what is happening and how they can build into it. So with that, I am actually going to go to Purvi. How about you?
All set.
All set. So the the question, which is Pehel, and just to give you a quick introduction, Pehel was last year's ISC award winner for the best
Yes.
financial institution. So they've done some tremendous work. Purvi comes from a great banking background, has been really close to a lot of the work in on water and sanitation. And so my question is going to be, what's been your experience at the ground level, working with at the base with respect to this as a product category? Has it been a challenge? Was COVID a issue for you? And how do you see this sector growing for your own business growing for it? Over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Manoj. Uh, Choosing me first one to answer because that will keep me awake. Okay, so I'm not sure if everybody is aware about how microfinance works, but typically microfinance works with women, and the main objective or the stated objective is to ensure that when they start contributing economically or in the income generation of the family, they get good acceptability, and the additional income that they are able to contribute for the family also gets used for health and education in the family. Unfortunately or fortunately, for so many years as microfinance institutions, we have always been talking about the women's contribution in income generation. And I really wonder why nobody ever talked about, their own health and hygiene. While we are talking about the improving health and education of the family, the health and hygiene of the woman in the family is so much compromised. So when we started talking about wash products, so we were also no different for 7, 8, 9 years. We were also talking all about only income generating activities. Also, regulation also had some requirements like certain percentage of your portfolio has to go towards income generating activities, which is now removed from the latest regulation that has come up in March this year. So when we started talking about wash as a product, besides the generating activity, our customers were also surprised that all the MFI come and talk about how many cattle you will be buying, dukan kab khologe, trading kab karoge. You are talking about wash. That was our first experience, the first hand experience, because they even were not expecting that. So in a way, it was a good beginning. Unfortunately, we started in 2019, and just 1 year later, COVID happened, and suddenly the priorities changed. So even at a family level, at a customer level, suddenly from all our effort on creating awareness on health and hygiene and water and sanitation, suddenly the question was on survival. The businesses were like broken, the jobs were lost. There were a lot of issues with the survival of the families. So for a while it took a backseat because first we had to ensure that they survive. But last 1 year has been, now we are pretty back on track in terms of driving our own priorities, and we really want to contribute much more than what we have already contributed. As we speak, about 3 to 4% of our portfolio is into water and sanitation. So we have about 4.5 lakh active customers, a portfolio of about 1,500 crore. And this is also, 1 or 2 years of little dull market in terms of priorities. But we see this as a good opportunity, not only in terms of the market and the kind of investment that is required, but also genuinely the kind of requirement that we see at a field level. Because while we keep talking about income generating activities, unless the health and hygiene of the family is maintained, it is not. And these are, most of our customers are like daily laborers. So if somebody falls sick, they lose their earnings. So indirectly, directly also, this is linked to the earning of the family. So yes, 3 to 4% portfolio is already there. As an industry, the portfolio is likely to grow almost double. So at an industry level, the portfolio is about 2,85,000 crore, which is likely to go up to about 5.5, 6 lakh crore by 2026. So in just 4 years, the portfolio is going to be doubling. That is what the latest MFIN report published says. And you just look at some percentage of increment on the existing portfolio and the kind of coverage that we should be able to do.
So just a quick follow-up. What was the, you went to women and you to your borrowers and you said, why don't you take this? How did you go about that process of behavioral change? How did you get them to make that understanding that this is a good loan product for them? vis-a-vis income generating products?
So as you always say that the change first it has to happen from your own place. So first we had to train our own people because they were also so hard coded in terms of only talking about income generation loan. So there was a lot of training that was done with Sadhan and Water.org, and we conducted a lot of capacity building sessions because first we had to change the mindset of our own people because historically they've always been talking about this, and for them going to women and talking about toilet and all also there is social taboo because unfortunately most of our loan officers are male and the customers are always female, so that also becomes a little bit of a there is a communication barrier that would always be there, but we had created some nice posters and things like that. So we had put it up in our branches. So whenever customer comes to the branch, we ensure that we talk to them about it. So it took little bit of a time for us first to change the mindset of our own people so that they can go and talk in the field. But yeah, it was not very difficult. We thought that it is going to be difficult, but it was not all that difficult.
Interesting. I'm going to take it to Bonani, who is actually comes from Nabsmriti. Nabsmriti is the lending arm of NABARD. And NABARD had come up with this for those around 2 years back. They came up with this 800 crore refinancing scheme for water and sanitation, which was done with the help of ISC, Southern, and Water.org with all combined forces to try to get that. Having done that, what's been that experience in the last 2 years? I'm sure you have the better insight of when you are lending it to MMFIs, NBFCs. Has it been a good story for you on the product? And what has been in terms of the quality of books that you're seeing? Over to you.
Thank you, Manoj. As far as NABARD is concerned, of course, yeah, before the refinance scheme, there was the Swachh Bharat Mission loan to NCDWSQ and the WASH campaign, and you were all part of that. And parallelly, this refinance product came, but Napsamriti started financing WASH much before that. 2018 was our first loan to one of the awardees today, that is Friends of Women, World Banking. We started with them and it was a demand push. Nilanjan is right here. So after that we carried on, and then the refinance came and it was a boon because we got a concession, although we were always passing on, but when we got this we could pass on more, so therefore we could give our loan at a concessional rates to MFIs. Even housing finance companies have taken it for toilet reconstruction, retrofitting, and even some ICC, NBFC ICC for wash loans to MSME. So we have been influencing and educating a lot, and we signed a MOU with water.org on our Silver Jubilee Day, that was last Feb. So the support we get is actually helping us a lot. In fact, Pahal took a term loan from us, which is 100% wash this year. Normally they divide it, but Pahal was one of those who said that we want to go 100% for wash. So the response is excellent, I would say, and quality is 100%, absolutely no issue. Asset quality has been wonderful in this, and the reason is that although MFIs, like Purvi said, focus on income generating activities, but the message going through now is that wash is also income generating in the long run, because if health is not taken care of, income cannot be assured, especially for the women. And women empowerment is necessary. Women's economic empowerment is necessary to make it a $5 trillion economy today. The other thing is that even in the short term, we have seen when I visit the women in the field that the time spared in collecting water leads to maybe 2-3 charpais, or anything that fetches them an income of around even 3,000 to 4,000 a month. So even in the short term, it is hugely income generating for the women. So our experience has been excellent, and even asset quality has been very good, and we have been receiving a lot of support from water.org, Sadhan, and all the accelerators, all the influencers in the field.
Thank you. You know, financing is a very interesting. You can take loans, you can take debts, you have government funds that are available, you have CSR funds that are available. And truly, a solution has to have everything combined into this. Then you have hopefully a place that you can make, wash, go to the next level. Ashwini, you have been part of, and you come from a financial background with having worked for a long time with IFC, and then you moved into the area of CSR. Given your wide range of experience, today, if I look at the CSR pool, even if we don't get enough of CSR pool coming into WASH, other sectors get preferences. Why is that happening? And what can we do? What can friends do to attract more funds for the? Are there some inherent roadblocks in this sector that are not getting the funds? Over to you. You may want to. I can give it.
Use this one only. Thanks. You allowed me a good time to take a nap. Like you got the opportunity to stay awake. No, thank you. I think CSR when it began, and what you're looking at as trends today is of the work that has been done in past 5 years, 10 years, whatever. And I think the immediate focus of CSR was about the quick wins, something that. Okay, let me come closer. No, 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 it's okay. I think it's my fault. Am I audible now? Okay. No, 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 that's fine. So I think the initial focus was on some quick wins because the ask from CSR was to demonstrate some quick things. Therefore, of course, the money was spent in a big way on education and health, which were more obvious. But if you ask me, the way I'm looking at the trend now, funds are moving in the space of uh, water and sanitation, and it's an indirect route as well, because suddenly climate change has caught up the fancy, and almost all organizations are now laying emphasis on climate change, and of which water and sanitation can't be left out. In fact, water becomes the most important issue for our country in terms of not just the industrial output, but also in terms of the sustenance of our communities in all parts of the country. So I think this I would say yes, of course, as of now, the trend is that hardly 4% funds have gone into water, and maybe 1 or 2% of the total CSR spending has gone into sanitation. But as JSW Foundation, what we've realized is that for us, water is a material issue. We being in steel, we being in energy, water is a material issue. And thankfully, water and sanitation are like two sides of the same coin. If you want to work either of them, you have to work on both of them simultaneously. You can't be picking and choosing between one and two. So one is that yes, CSR is making a shift. In fact, we are right now working on a platform where we're trying to bring together a whole range of climate solutions under one umbrella, which would have a whole range right from water, sanitation to say climate smart agriculture. The idea being that when you're talking about water and sanitation, you cannot be doing it in a silo. This itself is going to be connected to a number of other things at the same time. And so therefore, it's important for us to, look at things in a more comprehensive manner. And financing, why it's still considered to be a comparatively low thing is, WASH is a good mix of both soft interventions and hard interventions. You need infrastructure inputs. And don't talk about products which are at an individual or household level. When you talk about products which are for community level, because this is where CSR typically operates. CSR would not operate at an individual level or household level. It would operate at a regional level or at a community level. There, I think there is no solid mechanism even available today, which is going to ensure that if you put in the capex, the opex is going to be taken care of, or if the capex is going to be brought in by somebody, then the opex can be taken care of by somebody. So I think this is where CSR funds do find a challenge to come in. I'm not even talking about the regulations of CSR per se, but putting that aside, there are ways and means of finding ways to do that. The thing is, CSR is, as I keep on saying, it's like a drop in the ocean. It's 20,000 crores, all corporates put together in the country, which is much lesser than any departmental budget of just one government department. So therefore, CSR at best can create models. It can take the risk of doing initial investments, but then scaling up, and scaling up in a country as diverse in as India, I think it requires a whole lot of coordination at that level. water, sanitation happen to be state and municipal subjects. So therefore, scaling it up also has its own limitations in a sense. Replication perhaps can be possible. So these are the reasons why I believe that, investments in sanitation, in wash space, has certain constraints. We ourselves operate in 13 states. Each place we have to identify a unique way of intervening there in the same wash, domain. What we do in Himachal would not be, relevant for Maharashtra, and what we do in Maharashtra may not be at all relevant for Odisha. So each time the product portfolio also has to be, defined. The financial, mechanism of that has to be redefined, and I think that's the challenge for wash, as a sector. I'll stop at this.
Well, thank you. Very well said. The challenges of wash is definitely in many of the other projects, your other development sectors, you don't have this capex opex issue. How do we deal with it? And let's talk. We'll come down to having a more detailed. Are there solutions available? Where does the convergence play a better role to it? And I'm assuming one of you is awake at this stage. I think I'll. So I'll take you, Natasha, on this one, and you've been, and I have to say, Natasha, it's 2 years now that you've been with ISC? 2 years. What a fantastic journey. You've brought the change, brought an operational lens into the whole organization. Thank you. I wanted to understand, with the LHS, the lighthouse projects coming into place, government's deep interest and, commitment to water and sanitation at this stage. Is there even a place for commercial funds to be mobilized? Is there a need? Is there a place? And how do you think this needs to be thought through? And the convergence side, which
Yeah.
Ashwini was talking about. Let's hear that also.
Yeah, okay. So, when we started the Lighthouse project, it was, and I have to be very honest about it, it was just by chance. It was just a chance conversation with DDWS, Department of Drinking Water and Sanitation. And I remember, they were, the gentleman there at that time, the additional secretary, he was quite upset with us because he said, आप तो सिर्फ महुआ के साथ काम करते हो, हमारे साथ तो बिल्कुल काम नहीं करते हो. So I said, sir, आपको क्या चाहिए? I'm thinking, we actually worked quite a bit under Param sir. We have done quite a bit of work with DDWS. So he said, आपने वहाँ promise किया है कि आप cities, अमृत cities में कुछ करोगे, तो हमारे villages में भी कुछ करो. I was thinking, dear God, what are we going to do in the villages, And actually, that was the challenge comment that he made to us, that what can we do in the villages? Now, ISC's role has always been to bring the corporate sector and the government together. How can we look at corporate sector funding? And I know we talk about it primarily as CSR, but it's not, when I say corporate sector, I don't necessarily mean CSR funding alone. I'm talking about equity, I'm talking about debt. There are all different kinds of funding that are out there. And, as my colleagues are saying here, that money has never been available to WASH for whatever reasons, historic reasons. It's a government's job. I personally have said so often that, I pay my taxes, the government has to take care of everything. And that is a big issue when we come to urban. But when you come to rural, there it's a community. The community is responsible for itself. The Gram Panchayat does all the work, and the Gram Panchayat is in the community and part of the community. So effectively, the ramifications of the narrative change quite dramatically. I'll cut a long story short, but what we have finally come down to with regards to LHI is that government is very, very clear. And I don't know if any of you have attended any of Secretary Mahajan's, discussions with us. We've had 3 or 4 very, very open sessions for everyone to come and listen to her. She's very clearly said, I don't want your money. Private sector, I don't want your money. I only want your technology, and I want your ability to bring management experience. With full respect, I don't agree with her. And I'll tell you why I don't agree with her. I think there is a secondary market which is going to come up very, very quickly on us. In fact, I think it's already there. It's literally waiting in the wings, which is our MSME and our microfinance funding, which, people talk about but have never really given the push to in our country, which is there for us in the making. So if we truly want to make this into a successful circular economy, then that has to also be funded. And the government has very clearly said we will fund the asset. We will fund the asset, but beyond the asset, we have no money for anything else. Who's going to take care of the sustainability? Who's going to take care of the day-to-day necessities of funding? The O&M. The corporates will come in with a certain agenda. They will be able to fund to a certain point. CSR can help with that funding. But beyond that, who's going to do it? The communities have to become self-efficient on their own. And for that, we need to make them efficient. You can't tell them, ये आप FSTP चलाओ लेकिन पैसे नहीं मिलेंगे आपको because you're not credit worthy. I mean, this is one of the biggest issues that microfinance has also faced, right? Women are not credit worthy, so you have to create SHGs. Why should a woman not be credit worthy? Should we not be changing our laws, in terms of how we look at credit worthiness of women? So I think there is definitely need for private sector funding. I think the real issue is to look at the policies, to understand where those gaps are, and frankly, that's our job. I mean, I don't know, with full respect, I'm no longer a banker, so I don't know where this is all going now in India, and I haven't worked in this country for the last 10 years. But I genuinely believe that this is our job. The government is not going to come and give us any kind of, silver bullet and tell us, okay, this is the solution. We'll have to tell them what we believe is the right solution. I just.
Ashwini was nudging me on this side. He's saying, the time is now. The time is now. I love that comment because
Small little thing. If you look at it, what is the total amount of budget that has been put in for this wash thing? Somewhere around 60,000 crores, right? What is the size of the bottled water market in the country? 16,000 crores. That's the estimate. By 23, bottled water market is going to be 16,000 crores. Now, and what is the cost of actual water? I mean, the entire, focus of financing and whatever, it's happening on what? It's happening on the distribution side of the water.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's what we need to realize. I'm a part of the National Water Task Force for CII, and we keep on arguing and deliberating and discussing on this. I said every time you talk about, making distribution more efficient, bringing out more, ways and means by which agreements can be cracked with municipalities. Forget about gram panchayats for a moment, because that's not where the big market is. But if that is the size of the market and the cost of the resource per se from which the entire value chain begins, if that is not regulated, if that is not, under any kind of a mechanism, then how do you think you'd be able to do that? How would you be able to crack that? I mean, there is no mechanism by which, and there are ways and means of it. I'm just preempting and thinking aloud. For example, I've been talking to a couple of district collectors and the DFOs. I said, we as mining companies give a large amount of DMF fund. Where is it being utilized? It is being utilized for educational institutions. Anybody can invest in a school. It's a money spinning venture. Hospital. Anybody would come and set up a hospital and make money out of it. Who's going to invest in a watershed? Who's going to go and invest in a forest? Who's going to go and invest in soil conservation? So those models are absent. And private sector from CSR or whatever can only do it to a certain extent.
Yes.
But after that, this entire value chain would require lots and lots of support from government and financial instruments from corporate sector as well. So till you do not bring in, I mean, government alone cannot be expected to, bridge that gap for 16,000 crores and 60 crores, 600 crores or 60 crores or 60,000 crores, whatever it is. That's a huge gap, yawning gap of 16 times. How do you bridge that gap? So corporate funding would be required, but you will have to create those kind of products, those kind of models by which there is a ROI. Because if you really want to unplug, CSR funds will never be able to solve the problem. Actual investment has to come in the sector, and that will only happen when you have a product or you have a defined service platform by which that can happen. If you invest in a road, you get a return on it. If you invest in electricity, you get a return on it. How about doing it in water? So that, I think, is the crux. If we don't crack that, then it doesn't work. But yes, this is the time when the ministry's own budget has moved from 18 or some 18,000 crores to 60,000 crores, I think this is the time where, a lot of push is going to happen, and which is the time for corporates also to define how they can actually play a much bigger role in this. Only CSR will not solve the problem. This is for sure.
Can I just add one
Yeah,
thing
yeah.
to what Ashwini was saying? I think uh, the word CSR and corporates, we should now take a back seat with those words. I think the people who are literally sitting on the fences and laughing at us are the banks, because it's the banks that have to come into the fray. You talk about building a product. Who's going to build those products? The banks have to build the products. And the minute you go to a bank, the first thing the bank will say is, but it's not commercially viable for me.
Correct.
Because the rates of interest are completely out of the ground. So how are we going to get the banks involved? And I'm not saying they should do it at a loss. Absolutely not. No one will do it. None of us will do it at a loss. But how does the government enable the banking sector to actually come in with profitable solutions by just telling scheduled banks that you have to open a wash financing arm, and they'll pay lip service to it, and they'll do it for a little while, and then it'll go away. But to build actual products like Ashwini is talking about, that requires a lot of thinking, and that's where the government can help us.
Yes.
Thanks. I think, Natasha, you really, that's the bullseye, because when NABARD came out with this product also, which is a concessional refinance, scheduled commercial banks did not come into the picture. It was the RRBs, the MFIs, and us, of course, we are the major ones, and then the cooperative banks for toilets in packs. Imagine what a beautiful innovation. So why, when we went to them, when NABARD asked them what's the issue, they said, first of all, it's very difficult to finance this. We don't have that kind of, people who can take this ahead. Two is the concession is not enough. So the models which can help here is co-lending. And of course, government allows that 80-20 you do for priority sector. And now this is included in priority sector. So definitely co-lending is one way. The other is the social stock exchange, definitely, because that's direct, and a lot of people want to invest, want to give a zero coupon debt to anything which appeals to them, and wash is appealing to people today. People want a clean India. So one is SSC, the other is co-lending. We are also, actually, I was just talking to Purvi, should we do a PTC or a pooled loan issuance exclusively for wash, because then the rates come down, and that's important. Concessions are important. So for government also, of course, for Swachh Bharat Mission there was a subsidy, but there has to be an interest subvention, because we are looking at huge very large corpus here. So there is a case for a interest subvention, because this 40-50 basis points don't work. 200 basis points would work, and that's where even NABARD cannot do anything, because NABARD is giving this at a negative return. So this is where it is. So I think that's what, this is one of the suggestions that can happen. That's what.
So Bonani,
Can I just
yeah.
say one thing? It's very unfortunate, but it's a ground reality that, loan given for wash product is considered unsecured because there is no security, and hence the rate that we charge is so criminal. But you go for two-wheeler and you get it at 8-10%. But if you want a funding to construct a toilet, you pay 25%, while the rate of default is way lower when you fund it for a toilet. So, it's very unfortunate, but that's a reality.
Case for concessions. What about blended financing, where CSR and government can actually pivot their position from away from the we'll fund everything to we'll actually pay part of it and bring the interest rates down, interest subvention.
I mean, even if you talk to the ministries today, when they talk about private financing, they don't even use the word microfinance. You know that.
Yes.
You and I have had
Yeah,
this
yeah.
conversation with
Yeah.
them so often. They will only look at CSR because they believe that that's the only kind of funding that the private sector can bring in. But actually, way before CSR came in, you had microfinance. And that is actually also private sector funding. You also have all your banks that are there. If you make it, enable them and leverage their expertise, there also we can get some products. So I think CSR is, for me, actually CSR is a front. We should kind of tear it away and go behind it and look at other forms of financing.
But should CSR funds be used to bring down as interest subvention, to bring down and blend the cost of what a commercial banks would be? That would create much more
Yes.
availability of fund in the market than what a CSR 20,000. So,
Yeah.
Bonani, your thoughts?
I'd
And
like to come in
Ashwini,
there
yours?
because NABARD has given us something called a catalytic capital fund that is for climate smart, just climate action. So what we do is we blend it. And what we give to the, to our client is, like you said, it is a concessional funds. We are just blending the grant and our loan, our funds. So it works that way. It can work that way.
It can.
It can work that way.
But is CSR policy allows that? Ashwini, what's your thought
Yes,
on that?
it does. It does, and
does.
you have to be innovative around that. See, I think the situation of the market of wash is such that you would have to bring in a whole follow through of investments of different sizes, kinds of blending, I would say. Typically the process that you follow is that initially it's a grant, then it's a grant come soft loan, and then it goes into A series, B series, so on and so forth. uh, I think this kind of an experiment has worked very well in World Bank's marketplace, program, where they've actually funded such wash programs. And startups and all these, new entities, more agile entities that have come up, they can actually be supported. We are actually right now working on one such initiative where, when I was listening to somebody in the morning saying that, waste segregation is a challenge and etc. etc. So we are saying, why is it so necessary? I mean, it's a significant part of your wash program that solid waste has to be managed, or else your water body will get contaminated. So we are trying to work with two startups at the same time, how they can work in synergy with each other. I think Rupa is going to cover that in a presentation tomorrow, that how one looks after entire biological waste, how looks at the other part of solid non-biodegradable waste. And they don't bother much about segregation at household. It's a utopian thing that segregation would happen at household, and then it will remain segregated at the distribution channel, and then it would remain segregated at the collection point also. It's a very utopian process. So a technology which is going to feed into each other and work with each other, that you give me the garbage, I'll segregate it. There are technologies available, we'll segregate them into two, biological, non-biological, and we'll sort them out. So I mean, we know this might be a failure as an experiment. Doesn't matter. We will put some money there. There are two bright startups, who've been, doing this research for several years. We don't shy away from putting CSR funds in that to see, do they succeed or do they fail? If they succeed, which is a great probability, then what would happen is, this is a thing which is available for anybody and everybody to take care of. And I think that's where, another level of blended financing would be required. And that's where, venture capitalists and all those people would start coming into it. So I think the process can be started by CSR, but expecting that the entire attainment of 6.1 and 6.2 SDGs is going to be done through CSR blended finance, sorry, cannot be done.
So if you start with CSR, right?
Correct.
At the end of
Correct.
the day, there is no payback that you have to do. But where the issue will come up is if there is no follow through with CSR funding. So you need to have a model where you use the CSR funding as the catalyst to kickstart the project, and then you take it through with other forms of funding. Because there is always going to be, so like for example on the Lighthouse project, that is the basic issue right now. The corporates will come. The model is very simple. You have the government funding the asset, and you have the corporate who is necessarily going to be using their CSR funds for advocacy and working with the communities and ensuring that they become self-sufficient. But the corporate cannot walk away after the asset has been built. This behavioral change, which we were talking about just now, can take anything up to 3 to 5 to 10 years sometimes, depending upon the community that you're working with. And at that time, if you suddenly, corporate walks away and says, I can only give you 3 year funding, CSR funding. After that, I'm going to start using my funds somewhere else. You're stuck. That village, that community is going to be stuck. The same way on the urban side, when we put out these big plants and we say that, the municipality will say, we will give you money to build the asset, but after that, the whole land has to be taken care of by someone else. Now, if you look at models like Indore and Surat, they have actually done a phenomenally good job. They came first and second in the selection survey of 2022. In both these cities, the way we have succeeded is through these PPP projects, right? But the commitment that the private sector has to make them for the funding has to be over a long period, 5 years minimum. So if you look at all the projects, they're basically 5-year projects. They're not anything less than that. And after 5 years, in the fourth year, they suddenly start again, not suddenly, but they start to, the municipality starts to look at other forms of funding. Otherwise, who's going to pay?
Yep, fantastic. I'm going to move my attention to my colleague Sujoy so that he doesn't feel this was a waste coming over here. He's going to talk, we are going to listen. So be ready for it, Sujoy. You know, one, I have to tell you, so Sujoy is in a client, the consulting company has actually been instrumental in looking at the FSTP projects, which Warangal, Vai, and at Narsan. So three locations with the support of BMGF, they've actually done the monitoring. They've actually done the evaluation of what is these FSTPs. That's another part of our puzzle that we need to think through, right? We've done what we are talking about. The pilot testing, thanks to a grant, has been taken care of largely. What's been your learnings from there? Do you think these are commercially, we have reached a state of maturity that they can be actually at the right scale, they can move forward? Or are we still going to have the 3-4 locations and we keep talking about them over and over again?
Yeah, thanks, Manoj. I think I was having a great time listening because all the rest of the people were giving funds and I'm interacting more with the people who need the funds. So it was nice to hear that side of the stories. I was just relaxing and sitting. So yeah, to tell you about the projects that we have on the pyrolysis technology, the FSTPs, which are being run in these 3 zones. Let me just give you a few lines of the background as to why these were built. Yeah? These have been built with the goal of attaining pathogen-free output. Today, if you look at, and we've done enough research and enough study that go to FSTPs of FSTPs, there are multiple technologies being used. And as you said, Ashwin, that contamination does keep happening from time to time. So no matter what you try, at the end of the day, if you test the output, even after a sludge drying pad or any of the other technologies, there are pathogens. So that's what has really been, in your speech, you mentioned of the number of people who are dying because of waterborne diseases and infant mortality and diarrhea. So the goal with the foundation has been to try and eradicate this, and because of which they funded a lot of projects with the universities overseas to develop these technologies, and today we're taking them to the ground. So they spent about 3-4 years operating in India, and they're more or less stable as of now. The only changes we are making is, we realize that cost of imported products is prohibitive. It is not going to be feasible to run them in India. And therefore, our goal was to look at local manufacturing and bring the cost down significantly. And a big piece of this is, as you said, is to be scalable, you must have someone who has the engineering prowess, who must have the manufacturing capability, and most important, funds to manufacture. And we were happy to, be able to license this technology to Bharat Forge, Kalyani Group, to take on this pyrolysis manufacturing in India. And as we speak, we are having the first set of pyrolysis, Indian manufactured pyrolysis units being put into these 3 places. So we're doubling the capacities and putting these and hoping that this will become operational. So this helps us to cut down our cost by more than 70 to 80%. And I think we have done studies to say these are almost coming at par with cost of our biological based FSTP units. And it, of course, has lots of other advantages. What are the learnings from it? Are they scalable? I think we reached the scale where it can be scaled up. And over the next few months, once these are final tested over the next 3 months, we will see a lot of work happening on trying to get them onto the ground. The foundation, private sector, and a lot of other people are working on it, and we should be seeing them all. What has been the learnings for us? And obviously, over the last 2-3 years, we've learned a lot. First was to reduce capex. That's done. Now the bigger challenge, as you said, is the OpEx. Because no matter what we do, we set it up. These are mechanical systems and use power. And the first reaction was, how do we finance this power and cost of power? And the cost is going to be way more than a biological system, and so the ULBs don't have funds to run these. So we are experimented with putting solar power systems, which has helped on to reduce the cost of power significantly. And even with that, there are some regulatory issues. Some states give you, you sell it to the grid and you get a immediate reduction in the power bill. Some states you only get a credit. Now, if you get a credit, it's fantastic, but it doesn't solve my day-to-day problem because the cash flows of the ULB is still stuck. I have to pay the monthly bills on a day-to-day. So our next level of experiment is to try and see, can we put battery packs and actually use that to run some of the systems by itself. Having said that, the next other learning has been, training, capacity building. The first instance, when you go to the government, they say we're using a mechanical system. They say, oh, this is a mechanical system in a rural, in a semi-urban setup. How do you expect them to be managing all this? There are machines, there are heat, there is electronics. Simple question is, aren't they driving trucks? Aren't they, running pumps? Aren't you using a radio at home? And you're having a lot of people who I think in the rural areas can do much better on the telephone than I can on the mobile. Yeah. so, so, so really, so we said it just needs a bit of capacity building, and we are very happy having experiment with people who are running these sites are just from the local who've been trained a bit and they're running it. So I think those are a few of the learnings that we've had. Of course, big challenge on top finance, which I think I will come later on. But this is it. Yes, we see it ready to go, and we think it will move big.
Sudha, I'm going to push you a little bit.
Sure.
You're a great example of the various things that are available in the rural area, and point well taken in one perspective. But what about climate change, carbon footprint? You're justifying the beast that this is better, lesser of the devil, so I'll choose this. But I'm also hurting. Looks like your thermal paralysis is going to be a major roadblock to climate issues.
Okay, let's handle that.
Yeah.
So I'll
Solution.
give the full solution. So when we look at the thermal pyrolysis, the first part is pyrolysis itself as a technology. And we've done extensive testing with troops on our facilities, is that we are, to get a bit technical, we are taking to temperatures up to 800 degrees and not going up to temperatures beyond that, 500 to 800 degrees. So we're not burning anything. Yeah, we're not burning into ash, which is incineration. You see most of the things, places are burnt. You have these MSW plants, they're burning, they're creating ash, and you're then finding ways to reuse the ash. We don't burn. So A, we are better on that. B, we are using second-hand shipping containers for all our construction. We do not use concrete buildings and structures. So that gives us, and which has a much lower carbon footprint. The third is the biochar which we produce is actually reducing carbon. And today we are sitting and contemplating with the licensors as to how do we actually encash on the carbon credits that these facilities will produce. So we are looking at monetizing these carbon credits as opposed to thinking that we actually are more harmful to the environment.
You got away with that. And thank you for sharing. I mean, that is absolutely, it makes sense that you're not you're taking it between the microbiogens into the 500, 800. It's at a temperature that is actually not incarcerating it. And that solves the issue. You also talked about solar as a solution, but how much of that can it be dependent on renewable energies versus the footprint? Can it be completely go on a off-grid solution?
So as you said, to go completely on an off-grid, we are going to test with batteries right now, because if you're selling to the grid, you can't. I mean, you still need the power, generators or electric power to run the equipment. But we still think that we may need about 20% power, 80% we may be able to offset completely.
That's pretty good. Thank you. I'm actually going to switch back to you, Purvi. I know in some recent conversation we talked about you had come up with this khaki dignity idea, which is very fascinating, and what you had done. Maybe you tell us more about it, is there an MSME opportunity? Ma'am, we earlier talked about the rise of the MSMEs. What is the opportunity that comes through with this? Do you see the potential in your sector? I'll also add another question to it. Priority sector lending has done very well in terms of the household, and through the microfinance mechanism, it's worked. But when I look at PSL, it also applies to the MSME side, and it's been pretty slow over there. So what can, and this then after your Khaki, the dignity understanding, maybe this is a common question for both of you to how can MSME align with, no, PSL align with MSMEs? Thank you.
So Khaki Dignity was a project that, we just ended up doing again, a very small CSR project. We were, meeting up with some government officer, a very senior government officer for some other thing. And we realized that, in police force, there is some reservation that is there, even for the women. Unfortunately, they are posted, for example, Gujarat is going through election, and this happened about 4-5 months back. They are posted for election duties and, since morning till evening, and they are not supposed to be moving away from the place where they are posted. And most of these rallies are happening in big grounds, mostly in some village areas and all that places. So there are no toilets available. And males are somehow managing, though it is a problem for them as well. But women were totally helpless. So this very senior police officer that we spoke to, she was just narrating her story that, how she suffered because she was not allowed to move away from the place where she was, and she couldn't use washroom for entire day. And the next day she stopped having water, because then she can possibly manage the situation. And after that rally and things were over, she had to go through major medical issues, because she suffered with infections and all. And she was just giving her own example that I am such a senior woman police officer and still I'm suffering this. Just imagine, the junior ones being posted here and there. So that's where, we came up with this idea of creating mobile toilets van, which is, we created proper two Indian toilets, two Western toilets with sanitary napkin dispenser, biodigester. We created a van, and two of us, one of my, a friend, and she also runs a business. Two of us, we, gave it out of our CSR budget, which is now very extensively used during the election rallies. So we created a proper van which can be attached with any vehicle, and they can take it wherever they're going. So wherever there is election rally or any such event is happening, they're now taking that along with them, and that's helping. And we gave it in a good time, so it was very helpful. And when I was talking to Manoj, he gave me an idea that why can't we create MSME out of this, where this was just like CSR can be used as a catalyst. So he gave that brilliant idea just 2 days back, and I started thinking on that. That how do we make some, commercial sense out of this? Because otherwise, this will remain one nice, excellent CSR project, But if you really want to make this commercially viable and more impactful, yes. So I started working on that idea.
I think it's still, the bigger question is still there, which Rani, you and Puri, your insight is, why is there still a at the downstream, when fundings are not easily available and attractive fundings are not easily available for MSMEs? Because I think, Sujoy, your bigger concern is always that funds are not available, and therefore dependency then becomes on either MSMEs become risk averse, or they take dependency on government and dependency on CSR becomes enhanced. How can we break this gridlock? What's the challenge?
Yeah, I'll just say a point before she starts. I think MSME is predominantly tagged as an unorganized sector. And that also is, like microfinance is unsecured loan, there is no guarantee. Anything going wrong, this is the asset class which will take a hit. Similarly, MSME is always tagged as an unorganized sector. Maybe because, the way they are presented, also something to do with the entrepreneurs also, they never maintain their books properly. They don't, they are not able to give the kind of information that they should be able to give, whether it is business plan or their own financials. those are the kind of
And
basic
actually,
challenges.
what you're saying came out very clearly during COVID. If you remember, right at the beginning of COVID, Mr. Gadkari went not once. I think he had some in the first year of COVID in 2020. He must have had some 20 different meetings. National level meetings with various banks and with various different types of participants, only to increase MSME lending, because he felt that this is clearly, and I think that was excellent what he did. But did it increase MSME lending? No, it didn't. So I think there's a big message in that if the government is saying that they want to increase it, but it's still not increasing, then what is it that is not allowing it to increase? That needs to be addressed. I don't know, maybe.
So basically, when it comes to MSME, since we have financed MSMEs in WASH, so the insights we got is that the first thing that happens is MSMEs are hugely dispersed in WASH, other than Morbi and Thangat clusters who are also exporting. So their market is different. They are getting loans, but those are huge loans and they are cluster loans. So similarly for all the others also, if clusters come up, it becomes easier for any bank or NBFC to finance them, because then they finance the entire value chain. So this is what's really necessary, financing a value chain. Number two, for MSME, CGT MSME is available and they are getting that benefit. So the loan is coming at a slightly lower cost, maybe 2% less than what it would be. But the other thing is the need for innovation, because their costs remain very high. The model itself remains like that, not always very viable one. So to have a viable model, again, the startups have a role where the innovation comes in. Thirdly, those MSMEs which are coming into the PPP, let's say they're supplying to the government or they are taking up projects for the government, receivables becomes a huge concern or a challenge, that there is such hugely delayed payments. So when we talk to them, they said, can anyone take it up on our behalf for us to go so many times to the departments, to the municipality, to wherever? हम धंधा करेंगे या वहाँ जाएंगे, वही बात है. So there comes the need for the accelerators, the influencers. Thankfully in WASH we have so many. So I think that is also a message that comes through from the MSMEs themselves. So it's not that it's not taking off, but there's a very huge gap both in financing and in MSMEs coming forward to take up WASH as their product. That's what.
I just want to add, essentially, look at one of the biggest issues that the corporate sector has to work with a ULB is that we don't get our payments in time. Think about who the ULB is actually working with. They're not working so much with the large corporates in terms of numbers. The numbers are actually the MSMEs. They come from MSMEs, and they are the ones who are facing the real issues, because you don't pay one bill on time. The government does not pay one bill on time, and automatically that MSME is in arrears for the next 3 to 4 months. And some very often, as we saw during COVID, single earner families, they're also MSMEs. You have little shops all along the way. 25% of those MSMEs actually died in the first year. Died meaning they were completely eradicated. There was no way in which they could be rejuvenated, or brought back. So I think, we can keep debating this issue, but I think there is genuinely a need to look at the way MSME, first microfinance. Again, the way microfinance has found a route to actually go ahead and do business is to fund through clusters, just as you said. And you were talking about clusters, and I was thinking of microfinance because I said that's exactly the only route that we've been able to find. But is it the right route? Because you will not find clusters in, say, a city like Bombay. So what happens to those MSMEs who are in Bombay, in any locality, if they don't have the right kind of funding in times of need? They'll die. They're not in a cluster, right? So what is it that we need to do to be able to solve that?
I would like to flag the park, the food parks and the PM Mitra kind of a thing from the government. What happens is that there they get, it is like a plug-in kind of a setup. So it helps them. And if it is only for wash, let's say, now which products in wash? Wash again is so diverse. So whether we are looking here at only sanitary ware or water solutions or FSTPs or menstrual hygiene. So there, if it is a cluster that takes care of the innovation, the actual production, the financing comes in, and the markets. So the entire value chain in a cluster, just like the parks, it can make a difference. Only thing is there, the initiative here has to come from the government. There's no other way. That's what.
So just to add to what Bonani and Natasha was saying is, if you look at the FSTP side, you really realize that the companies who set up the FSTPs, they're paid by the government. It's government or ham model or whatever. So you're guaranteed that you will get a payment. But you look at these FSTPs or organization we've set up, you realize that they don't get payments on time. So they have done their construction. They've put in the 50% funds they were supposed to put in for the construction. They've raised it, put it in, but as they've done it, they're not getting money. Now, how do they survive? And that's our biggest challenge. So here you have a guaranteed payment, which you're going to get from the bank, from the government, but it's a delayed payment. Now, how do you monetize it with the banks? The banks are not willing to lend to you. So I think there's some mechanism that is really needed to. It's a secure asset. It is not as risky as lending to a startup doing anything else. Here, you know you will get the money, but it's only a question of time. And how do you survive that? 1.5 years, 6 years, especially if you put in the capex in. You're putting 4, 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 crores, and you have it all blocked because the government is not paying you. And it's a mechanism that every single FSTP is paid on a delayed basis. Yeah. 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 But the discounted bill will come if your invoice is fully accepted. If your invoice is accepted, you get the payment. It's normally stuck for some tick box to be ticked somewhere down the line, and that's where everything is. They're not able to get the money, nor is it monetizable. Yeah.
This is very pertinent because payments are possible. I mean, you could get credit, you could actually get credit notes coming and being issued, which is then bankable in nature. But there's always the bank, the local ULB or the regulator is also then playing the other side where they are putting clauses which are not friendly enough and easily which happen, which slow down the payment. How do you unlock those situations? I think that's the real problem. It's not the payment mechanism, it's the way the corruption and the system gets blocked.
System that is one of the finest in the world. I mean, the way the RBI has put in place the RTGS, the NEFT, and after that, all the other different types of payment gateways that we have in our country, nobody else has that. Even the member has that. But on the other side, support through policy and through regulation is so poor and so vague that your payment gateways are just not, all the payment goes to individual C2C kind of transactions. B2B, which is the most critical piece, just doesn't get addressed.
The problem is not in terms of technology for payment gateways. The problem is that for a ULB, once the fund collected goes into the government exchequer, then from that large pool, it's a black hole.
Absolutely.
Nobody knows from where that fund is going to come.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk. I mean, restricting our discussions only around say WASH. If WASH is a local municipal issue and the municipality is responsible for it, every time when you pay a water bill, there's a sewage allowance, the cess that you pay. Where does it go? Does it go to that exact municipality? Perhaps not. It goes into the government exchequer. Now from there, the allocation would be done on the basis of the non-plan and the plan expenditure of that particular department. When and how it will trickle down to that particular ULB, you don't know. And so therefore, of course, for him also, he would have some silly reasons to, make your payment delayed for 6 months, 1 year, whatever. I think that's the crux.
Some of it is because they don't have the funds coming in, so they find ways of delaying it. there is also some element of corruption that gets into the system. But today, I think they're working on models to clear that up from the government. I believe there's some portal which is now asking them to clear up payments, and if anyone doesn't clear up payment on the stipulated time, they have to give an example. But having said that, it still exists. So you will get a payment that's 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. Now the question is 3 months, how do you survive with a 20 crore or 30 crore investment of your own?
But Sujoy, just again, I'm again going on the back of experience. I think the government has actually understood this issue,
Yeah.
right? The delayed payment issue has been made so vocal
Yeah.
by industry that they understand. And I'm talking primarily about WASH right now. So they've understood it. In fact, now every year when the budget, the central budget is bifurcated into state level, they actually send funds out with a tag in terms of where the money is supposed to be spent. So, for example, if in a particular state they're doing, retrofitting of toilets, then they will say X amount of crores has to go into retrofitting. You have to, the state will then decide how to farm that money down. So they are from a government perspective, I think they are trying to do what they can do. I think where we as the private sector come in is, we need to make it, I guess, more the information more available to them as far as the bottlenecks are concerned. So, just as Sujoy said, they've got a portal now. The portal does tell the states that they have to upload every month how they are expending their money. All that is there. So, they're using all the best kind of softwares possible to be able to address these challenges that we're all facing. But we have to constantly keep giving them this feedback. It's and that I think really lies with us, because unless we do this, unless we have enough forums, unless we have enough dialogue with them, they will continue to do what they're doing because they are not on the ground. They're not dealing with the issues like we are.
Yeah, I do lean on ISC and Natasha, your offices, to help us in building that. That's a big mandate for ISC. I do have a question from the audience or a comment coming in from your side. I will take that, and then we'll continue on the last part of this conversation, which is related to climate and how do we look into it. But over to you.
Sure. I didn't want to interrupt, but I thought a dialogue with the audience would also help. So,
No, absolutely.
just to add on all of your comments on how to work with ULBs and the government and the private sector, it is very important just not give feedback, but have private sector engagement through whatever means of financing, whether it's CSR funds or otherwise, to work with the ULB, which would involve capacity building, governance issues, and work hand-holding support, which somehow I feel the private sector partners shy away. So I'm from the non-profit sector, development professional who we work with as Urban Management Center very closely with the governments and and the state and the central ministries to be able to leap and connect with the private sector. However, private sector does not come forward unless there is branding, unless there is visibility for themselves. So these are softer issues where it comes to capacity building, where it comes to working on governance issues. So I would also like to understand, is there a dialogue with your clients, your partners, your members to look beyond just building and rebuilding or repairs like Sujoy mentioned, and hence we get into a problem where they don't pay. Hence we also get into a problem where, because ULBs in government sector are slow, not as fast as probably private sector would work. So is there? That's my question to all the panelists.
That's exactly where I think some of our challenges lie. The rate at which the payments happen, the bottlenecks that are happening, and the what is expected to be delivered for the MSME is actually a deterrent for the MSME to come into it, right? And I think Natasha's point, is that they are understanding this policy. There are the technology is helping. Platform is there to now becoming a place. The question is the last mile connectivity, or the first mile connectivity. Does that really convert into funds?
I think what Manvita is actually correct me if I'm wrong, what I understood from what you said was, her organization represents the actual implementing organization on the ground, right? So effectively, they work with corporates. So, for example, CSR funding. And one of the asks of the corporates is that you give us our branding. Otherwise, it has to be a give and take for them, right? Now, very often when that happens, there may not be an opportunity, if what I've understood is right. So how do organizations that are actually taking, making that last mile connectivity happen, where do they go for redressal? How does the government help them, to get that redressal? And you're absolutely right. I mean, I know prior to my, working with the ISC, I was with an NGO myself. And I remember, the whole concept was, why should we give you the money? Why don't we put the money directly into the program itself? But what corporates do not understand is that for them to actually implement the program on the ground, that organization also has to survive. It's like somebody coming, a buyer coming and saying, if I'm making, I don't know, tables, he's saying that I will pay for the table, but I won't pay you for your services, to make that table happen. And that's a very real problem with the, with the NGO community in our country, that philanthropists, and they are the ones who normally fund that sector, not corporates as much as we would want them to. They themselves ask this question: why should I give you the money? Why shouldn't I just put all my money into the program? And you're saying, but who's going to then deliver the program? You have to pay their services, their salaries have to be paid, and NGOs don't make a profit in any case. I mean, theirs is a non-profit organization, so they wouldn't make a profit. Correct. But they have operating expenses that need to be paid. So I think that's really what you were saying, right, Vanita? If I'm...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Add one more thing is that the difference between like philanthropists is that when I as an individual give money, I'm not bothered. I can monitor, not monitor if I trust. But where it comes to CSR, the rules are so stringent now that they have to monitor, they have to make sure there's no, like for us, no greenwashing or washing as we say, because our 100% CSR is for wash. So we say there shouldn't be any washing, but we don't have the capacity to go and monitor that. So again, the case comes that there needs to be social audit. So these are the aspects I think which also, there are these stringent norms which again might need to be relooked into. Yes, that's what I wanted to flag.
I think that's exactly what you were saying, that if the corporate is going to give all the money into the project itself, then what happens to the intermediary who has to deliver the project? So,
You asked actually two questions. One is about visibility. For sure, for software interventions, there cannot be any visibility opportunities, so-called branding. But I think, this is where, I echo what you're saying. At the board level, when you really want to go and tell them that, something really genuine has been done, your words are not sufficient enough. No matter how convincing you may be, how, uh, high your integrity in your own eyes may be, but I mean, there's a level of suspicion, and I think that's the way the boards function anywhere. They are supposed to ask those difficult questions. So I think visibility, there are ways and means of finding those opportunities, that is always possible. I think the second part which you're saying, let's be honest, I think I am not, shying away from admitting, where people are habitual of buying products, standardized commercial products, with the same procurement lens, if you're looking at procuring services of a service institution or a partner, there is an inherent problem in that. It's an everyday struggle. I am, being very candid, and we find out ways of doing it. Because for sure, any organization, and I'm telling you, it's not just the corporates. I will not mention the Government of India ministry. There was a ministry at some point of time in their whole scheme, there was not even 1% of the entire allocation for the implementing agency. And I was with at that point of time, and we were advising them to redefine the policy. Why this scheme is not being taken up? I said, where is the cost for the implementing agency? You have created an inherent cycle of corruption by by assuming that the implementing agency is going to take a cut out of this and a cut out of that and cut out of that. So every single cost, you gave an example of the table. When I'm buying a table, I'm not paying for the labor charges of that table separately. I pay for the table as a product. So I bought a table for 20,000. It may have wood for 5,000, remaining 15,000 may be labor cost. So I'm fine paying 20,000 for the table because it's a standardized product. How much of that is labor? How much of that is raw material? I'm not bothered. In this case, this becomes a challenge. So therefore, this lens will, of course, would require tinkering and would require, some bashing by some people in some system somewhere in some organization.
Yes. Yeah.
No, so we are at least at JSW, we are looking at another solution for that. We are creating a separate program only for capacity building of the organizations. You're talking about implementation costs. I'm talking about capacity building of the institutions.
I have to leave, and I was just wondering if I could just quickly ask a question because I have to leave. I'm Vilma Rodriguez from Sahas Zero Waste, and we are one of the MSMEs that work with solid waste on the ground implementation, and we face exactly the same problem. So I'm grateful for this discussion. But, in terms of the solutions, when you come to processing, and this is a huge resource. Fecal matter, liquid waste is a huge resource. So are we really putting a priority on circular economy solutions rather than just wasting this good resource? So I would unfortunately have to leave, but maybe I could catch up with some of the solutions that are being provided. But is that really a priority, especially in our villages where, the water could go back? You have good possibilities for all of that material to come back.
Yeah, so I mean, and maybe I'll connect with you later to give you more details on the technologies. The real goal is actually that is to make it everything to be recycled back into the economy. So if we're talking about the FSTPs, we're producing biochar, which actually goes in as a soil nutrient with the fertilizers. And there are enough studies to say that really enhances the quality of the soil. So at our FSTPs, we actually have farmers standing in a queue with the wheelbarrows to come and take the biochar. The water is also completely recycled and used for whatever. So there are smaller things that we have at a decentralized level for the toilets. And our first goal is to make it decentralized, which will treat the solid and we will treat the liquid and recycle the water. We put our first toilet in Kolkata in Rabindra Sarovar Stadium, where near the lake. So water bodies is close by. You don't have any sewage system. What do you do? So all the water and all the solid is being recycled and put in. So yeah, it's actually focusing on that as well.
Thank you so much. Great question to leave us with. Come ahead. You can take that seat over there.
Developed CSR strategies and yeah. Yeah. So, see, what I have learned over time is that financing in WASH, CSR plays a very complementary role, which very rightly you have mentioned already. But that work doesn't look very attractive for corporate sector. For example, I'll just give an example. We have set up 5 JLG-based enterprises for providing desludging services in Maharashtra. Now, we have, through Plain Grant, we have provided CAPEX support to the 5 members JLG to buy desludging truck. But in order to function, that enterprise needs working capital. Now, for working capital, if they need loan or if they want to avail financial services, the interest is so high. They don't have collateral. So in that case, they are really discouraged, and then the sustainability become a question mark. So here we have a platform called Revive, where we bring all the private sector companies together to create a pool of fund, so that that fund can be used as an interest subvention or different financial tool to provide the best possible rate to the beneficiaries. So, but for Wash, while we have received fund from different companies like Google, LinkedIn, to support financing and to support such activities, but under Wash, for Wash related MSMEs, companies are not very much encouraged, because these work doesn't have a very uh, tangible impact, or maybe it doesn't show very much that yes, we have done this. So for example, we have Godrej, who have provided returnable grant to beauty proners. We provided skilling and everything to them, and they started their own business. But when it comes to sanitation, one, it is capex heavy. So while we try to provide them plain grant to give that cost, but for interest subvention for working capital, it becomes a challenge. So what we need here is to first bring all the private sector companies together, have a chat with them, understand, and there definitely are JSW doing great job on the ground, but there definitely are many more such companies which need more of say understanding, awareness. I think this knowledge is also missing within the private sector companies and understanding, and we need to bring them all together to create that private sector funds pool, and then forward and use it as a tool to complement the lending and financial support to the community.
Can I answer that question? So, what you say is one option, but honestly, it's a very long stretch.
Yes, it is going to be.
In
It is not
reality,
going to be.
that's not something that will happen very quickly, even if
Yes,
it does happen.
true.
One way that we have found that works is, as Ms. Kidwai mentioned this morning, um, look at sanitation as a horizontal, not as a vertical. So when you present to a corporate, corporates understand what? They understand education, they understand livelihoods, they understand gender,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
These are three, and health, sorry. So
Yeah.
these are the four things that they understand very well. If you go with anything else, you're going to have a really hard time trying to sell it to them. And the reason for that is because the tangible benefits are not there for their board to be able to appreciate them, just as Ashwini was saying. The way you position sanitation is as a horizontal. If you don't have good sanitation, you cannot have good health. If you don't have good sanitation, gender suffers. And there are enough documents and enough data for you to be able to support it. That's the way to sell sanitation. And I'm calling it that, sell it to a corporate. Because unless you do it that way, you will never be able to get their attention. If you tell them, go build toilets, the only person who can tell them to build toilets is the Prime Minister. And trust me, no, it's a fact. And trust me, even when he says it, they will find ways and means of getting out of it. Why? Because they don't understand it. I mean, there has to be a give and take on both sides, be practical.
Correct.
So sell it to them in a way in which they can sell it. So help them to help you.
Yeah,
So,
that's what
you know,
we try to do.
yeah.
Can I ask you one question? You get a water bill, you pay it, right? You get an electricity bill, you pay for it. Can I set a sewage bill to you? Every month I'm going to take out sewage from your home. Will you pay me separately for that? No.
No. That is the
So you're
government
trying
job.
to sell a product or a service. No, you're saying no. It's not a hypothetical question. I'm asking a very practical question. If your gas line is stopped, you will immediately make sure that you pay that gas bill, right? Water bill you will certainly pay, electricity bill you will pay by sure, and you will certainly not forget your internet bill, right? But if you get a sewage bill separately for your particular home, would you mind delaying it? Would you really be so sure about paying it? Yes.
No, but it's been arrived at. 80% of your water consumption is your sewage disposal.
So that's exactly
that
what
is,
he's saying,
so there is a thumb rule. If the government so wants, and actually by the act it is allowed. It's just that when the cities are not doing it, it's a political issue, political will issue. So some smaller cities have done, like Alandur in Tamil Nadu, etc. There are good examples as well. So sewage bill can be sent. But it's a question of if the private sector is handling your sewage, then what is the cost share, etc. And it goes into a
Yeah, that becomes an issue.
yeah, that issue.
So I want to. I have two options available. I think we've covered a lot of grounds today. We can call it a session today. But I want to not miss out the idea of climate in the process. And, I had one question, which is especially for you, Ashwini, how do you see the net zero effect, water net zero effect being a key driver for corporates to invest into? I know that you've been a big promoter of that thought process. So I want to get your sense. Is there an economic value that corporates can get by achieving net zero?
For sure, I think net zero is, both from carbon point of view as well as from water point of view, it's important for us as a group. And we are fully focused on that. That's one part. The second part is, it's again like, how do you present, how do you find the economic value out of everything that you do? Sorry, it's really bad. I just messed up.
Take your time.
No. Can I?
I want to take it to the next level on that question is, and I think, Natasha, you well said, sell it to them. The whole concept that we've got to sell it to them. Carbon footprint, net zero, are we doing enough from a banking perspective to get funds available and from a product point of view that actually we can use that to mitigate and to use climate as a way to get cheaper funds, to get better funds availability and take it to the where it's needed most?
I think most people, and if I talk only about the MFIs have not even started talking climate. Forget taking the advantage. It's in very initial states that, we realize that, for example, as a cross sell, we do certain products, and that can earn you some carbon credits, and that can be monetized also. But that's a very recent discovery, and 99% of the people are not even aware. So I think right now the awareness level is very, very minimal. Forget about, raising the funds. First of all, as an industry, we need to acknowledge that the kind of customers that we are dealing with are the most vulnerable ones. They are the ones who are least contributing to the entire mess that is created, but are the ones who are going to suffer the most. Whether it is in terms of, the stability of their income. I'm also doing something on climate refugees. Those are the kind of new terminology as an industry we will have to learn, and then possibly we'll have to create products, whether it is solar powered, roof solar thing for them, or EVs for our own staff is what I pitched in. That why can't we, in microfinance, we have about 1.5 lakh staff, and all these people are moving in the field about 50 to 100 kilometers every day on a two-wheeler. So why can't we first, facilitate them and buy electric EV? That can save us a huge credit. So, so those are the kind of things that we have started talking, but we are very far from.
So
getting it.
again, how do we fast track this position? Because that is WARSH is so connected with climate. Ashwini was talking about it.
Correct.
And funds are at the end of the tunnel. There are funds available. It's just that we are not being able to join these dots completely to mobilize funds. So what steps should we be the sector be taking the?
I think first creating that kind of awareness for the industry itself, that the kind of opportunity, because if you only talk them about the customers, it's like, you have to make it attractive, like she rightly said, you have to sell it. And if they see that there are some benefits, particularly, it can be commercially become, it can be a viable thing, then it becomes doable. So first, I think I can tell you 99% of the MFIs do not even know there is something called climate change. 99%.
And that,
So
Please.
Some years ago we had for the, I guess the sector, and I'm not talking about Bosch, I'm talking about the development sector as a whole, had put forward an idea about the social stock exchange. You made a brief mention of it. We do need, first of all, to recognize that there is potential for credit. You call it carbon credit, you call it climate credit, you call it whatever kind of credit. There is potential for credit in the development sector, right? To be able to do that, you need an official vehicle that is going to make that recognition available, so that people or the industry at large can actually take that into account. Once that vehicle is there, I mean, why do we invest in stocks and shares? Because you have a vehicle that allows you to see that this is the value of the stock. So effectively now I either buy or sell or whatever, right? Similarly, for the value that this development sector has, we need to have a vehicle, an official vehicle that will allow us to be able to measure it. And one of those vehicles is this carbon credit. So if we can do that, then we can automatically start to put numbers to it, and then, of course, buy and sell it a different thing.
Okay, of course, NABARD has been at the it's a forerunner with being the NIE for the adaptation fund, the NAFCC, as well as the Green Climate Fund. And what NABARD has been doing is climate adaptation mainly for the vulnerable communities, absolutely coastal, tribal, drought proof, flood proof, all kinds of NRM projects. There are 40 running right now, which are all pilots, because 40 in a country like India is just a test. Yeah. So the mainstreaming is necessary. That's why organizations like this, who are in with the community level organizations have to take it up to mainstream, because we can't really depend on the government to mainstream. That's asking too much. The other is that Green Climate Fund is a blended finance. It's a loan cum grant, which was through Tata Clean Tech. That's a rooftop solar for MSMEs, and it's taking off actually. And because that created the atmosphere, now Electronica is lending hugely to MSMEs for rooftop solar and even energy efficient systems. As far as NAP Samruddhi is concerned, we have been lending to solar and EV, and they're taking off hugely. EV especially. There is a huge demand for EV, the entire value chain starting from the vehicle to battery swapping, battery manufacturing, then the stations, the charging stations. So it is taking off, not through MFI, of course, it is through NBFCs, other NBFCs. But what we realize is that to mainstream, what you said, MRV, that is measure, report and verify. That's the most important part of it. And that's where we need to educate and have more of these auditors who will be doing the social audit again. So ultimately, for anything relating to carbon, anything relating to climate change, social stock exchange, and there can be a climate stock exchange specifically for this, because exactly this is the need of the hour. And based on social audit, and social audit should not stop with the report. A person like me cannot even read 100 reports to decide on financing. I need a rating. So this is again which can be taken up. Please have a rating just like the CRAs do. Tell me this is AA and this is A. It gives me immense amount of confidence in that particular project or entity to be able to finance. And then debt fund as well as blended and grant, everything will come in, not an issue for climate as such. People are aware of climate, but this is the thing, this is the issue, that there needs to be a kind of a rating mechanism.
I just want to say, as an industry, like yesterday only we met government of Gujarat, and we were surprised to know that that's the only state government which has got a climate change department since 2009. And it was a discovery for all of us. And since I was quite actively advocating this climate change and related causes to be funded, the adaptation to be funded, yesterday Sadhan, government of Gujarat, we actually got into a meeting and we have requested government, because government also is spending about 97-98% of the funding only on mitigation, because they feel that they do not have capacity to do such adaptation chota retail projects, because they are too small. They don't have that kind of a bandwidth. So what we have suggested that we have our customers are the ones who needs it the most, and we have a good network as a Sadhan members, and they can use our network to reach out to those customers. We can become their implementing partner. So we have suggested that we do a tripartite agreement and we do a blended finance. We also bring in the carbon trading credit also into play, and we create a fund which can possibly, we have suggested then that Sadhan can execute, but NABARD can be the agency which can manage the fund.
Yeah.
And then basis the and we identify these are the projects, and then the MFIs can really go ahead and just implement it. And
That will bring down the cost of
substantially. We will also most of the risk factor that is involved, because all this the retail projects that we are talking about are still very in initial stages, so the risk involved also is little higher, but that can be compensated from the carbon credit, and then government can help us with the cost of fund.
So, Purvi, I have a question for you. I was reading in a paper some days ago that one of the ways to get carbon credits, specifically with regards to below the poverty line, right, is the way in which you can help them turn around behavior. Okay, so I'll give you a simple example. Instead of using wood and coal to cook, if they start to use filters, right?
Or they can use induction cook stove. That
Whatever.
also gets
Yeah.
2 ER per annum.
Exactly. So you're getting the benefit of, you're getting a carbon credit over there. The problem is, first of all, we don't have a mechanism to be able to capture this data, right? And in addition to that, how does the benefit go back to that below the poverty line? That is the big question that a lot of NGOs are asking, that, we put so much effort into this piece, but how do we, and the benefits that are coming, A, we can't measure them, and B, we can't give it back to these communities. So that is also a potential that maybe can be explored when you're looking at the broader issue around carbon credit.
See, I did little bit of a research, and we are already talking to a couple of agencies who are into, framing the carbon. Actually, you create a plan or a project where, you'll say that these are the kind of customers credit that is expected and can be traded. And this is not like everything you get upfront. So, you get it basis the life of the product. So, for example, induction cook stove or gravity-based water purifier, which are very small but impactful products. And that also serves, the water, clean drinking water agenda. But that is spread over a, 3 to 5 years of period. And per annum, for example, you get $2 as a credit. So potentially, when they come for a next cycle, you can give them an interest subvention, or the kind of bad debt that you will have, the risk that you can cover from such
But over
credits
a
coming
period
in.
of time, you can still get a benefit. That's
You
what I'm
can,
trying to say.
yeah,
right?
yeah, you can.
Not like what
how.
we are facing today in microfinance, where we're still only funding SHGs. And we've been doing it for donkey's years. So by now, we should have reached a level where individuals should be considered also, but we still don't consider them.
Correct. But there should also become a plan of a big, so you create a plan and then individuals are coming in.
Exactly.
Because you cannot go and trade 2 years in the market. So you create a pool of years and then it gets traded. It becomes sizable
That's where you
enough.
start, yeah.
Yeah, that's how you frame it.
I think there's a question there.
Talk about the point that you mentioned about bookstores and removing or eliminating the step of firewood burning. My name is Tanvi Sedeka and I represent an Austrian social enterprise called Mayo Global Services Private Limited in India. We improve access to safe drinking water in rural households, eliminating the step of firewood burning, and we make the use of the most renewable and the most natural source energy that is available towards the sun. We make them use the solar disinfection method to decontaminate biologically contaminated water. To make this use of solar disinfection more practical and effective. We have a device which has been created by us, by our founder in Austria, and it has a solar panel and it has a UV sensor. It senses UV rays and has an indicator. Indicates after a few hours of exposure under the sun that the water is purified and decontaminated. This is one of the parts I want to focus on how we implement the program. We have a program design in which we make the households go through behavior change training, which includes wash, sanitation, menstrual hygiene, personal hygiene, women empowerment, because as the primary caregiver of the family, we teach them, we impart them with the knowledge on how to use the solar disinfection method. With each device that we give to the household after this rigorous 9 months worth of training, we eliminate 2 tons of CO2 per household per device per year. Our programs are dual standard registered and we are implementing our programs in Madhya Pradesh at the moment in 3 different districts. So 50,000 households and 1 lakh tons of CO2 reduction each year is what we are focusing on. This is what I wanted to inform about. Apart from this, we are selling these credits in the voluntary US and European markets. Now, unless and until the markets become mandatory, I don't think, especially in India, the way, unless and until there was a CSR law, nobody wanted to donate their CSR money into corporate social responsibility. When people were using the CSR money, they are using it not for region-specific issues, but issues like education. I will not name the company, but I've been associated with it previously, and they would just give the devices to let the cost be offset for the CSR programs, whether it's smart schools in Navodaya Vidyalaya, Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalaya, and just get rid of the CSR money that they had to put in. I think if the CSR funding is more region specific, what's needed in a country, we'll be able to get better benefits of it. I know there are departments of the government that are working on the national carbon market and then coming up with the costing of how much the credit fee, who can create these credits. Universal carbon registry is happening, but unless and until the voluntary market of the carbon gets it's translated into a mandatory carbon market, I think it is a slow path.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That was very insightful. The fact that you're looking at those mandatory carbon credits within the country itself to be exchanged. So in exchange for that, I think I'm going to, in lack of time, I wanted to actually give it back to, Sudhir.
One quick point that just to with that. It's the mandatory piece, and when we talk about some of the regulations and the policy, so we all remember like the prior decision. So nobody was bothered about the small and marginal farmers. And RBI gave the data of 80% of it came aligned with. So why can't we also move forward within the water sector? Even 1 or 2% of the limit, sub-limit, can release somewhere around 35.
That's exactly what I was saying. We should have something.
Yeah, just quickly, I'll take another 1 minute. So what we were talking about the value proposition, as Naina mentioned, it's a vertical thing. So again, we utilize the UNICEF study that suggests they took a good sample, 12,000 households, where the 50,000 rupees is the savings if you have proper sanitation facilities household, and they gave detailed report. That's where we went to the industry, and again, microfinance industry, it was very difficult to tell like it is not a consumption loan. Although we admit it's not an income generation loan, but it's income enabling loan. And those some of the studies and facts, and it was an independent study that suggests why this is a value proposition for the micro-lending industry to lend. Because when the almost 40 plus lenders came back and they said our repayment rate for wash is either equal to GLG loans or slightly higher than that. So when you see a value proposition or a lender from government that mandate, maybe the things align in our desired.
Thanks, Sudhir. Now coming back to the carbon credits and the whole idea of what CSR can do, what you're talking about, and I think if you're feeling okay, Ashwini, we'll hear your comments briefly.
I'll try
before
my
we close
best.
for today.
I'll try my best to be brief. And so I think, from where I left, I think CSR and corporates, let me, separate the two, would have to play a role which is mutually complementary. And I take that example from our own group, where, the group is getting into renewable energy and hydrogen as the main source for producing steel and all that stuff. How do you connect it? By small nudges in the community. I think that's where the catch is, and which is how a lot more multiplier effect can happen. So if we are doing plastic waste management as one of our wash programs, it's connected to co-processing of plastic waste in our own steel plants. If we are doing zero liquid discharge in our steel plants, then of course the communities around our steel plants should also be water neutral, if not water positive. And so therefore a whole lot of GIS database studies, and then making sure that you work on each of those villages to make sure that that water footprint is managed. And it's not as if it's just because of CSR and you're doing it for a benevolent reason. The fact that you need a social license to operate and you are a zero liquid discharge company as a steel plant inside a particular location, it's important for you to make sure that that same philosophy, same principle, and that rigor, that level of awareness is also passed on to the communities around. Then only it works. If we are working on, and then how you can nudge the community, I think what we are toying with the idea is, if you work, see, you talked about climate. Climate change is a whole range of so many things: water, sanitation, hygiene, agriculture, a whole lot of things. So we inadvertently do a lot of things within the climate space, but don't necessarily classify them as that. When you so what at an enabling level, we are, as I mentioned, I think in the beginning itself, we are creating a platform with India Climate Collaborative. We are calling it as a climate solutions platform. The idea being that whatever kind of technologies or approaches are available within the climate change space, can they come under one roof? There are a whole lot of technical institutions. There are NGOs who are working at the grassroots level. They don't know what technologies to be deploying. Donors don't know what to be supported. And how do we bring all this on a common platform so that it's an online as well as offline interaction to make sure that you do the right thing? When you are doing plantation, are you aware of the biodiversity of that region? Are you taking care of that or not? If you're doing watershed development and you're doing soil conservation work, are you doing the right kind of species, for plantation? I mean, it's very nuanced, and there are a whole range of things which we do mistakes without even knowing about them. So that's why I think it's very rightly brought in by you that climate change could be the platform under which you can look at a whole range of things. And necessarily, I think WASH would be a key pillar of it. So if we are working with, say, farming communities, can we push our WASH programs there? Because then we can demonstrate the improved WASH activities, how it is going to impact on their agriculture. The paradigm shift that I was mentioning, how waste to wealth kind of a thing needs to be looked at. It happens at an individual level at some places, but at a community level, it fails. Like the DWAT structures that I've always been talking about. When you do it with an individual farmer, he's very excited because of the BOD available from that water, and he can actually possibly get a better productivity by using that wastewater. But when it comes to the community or a gram panchayat, that lady from SARS has left. We tried with 12 gram panchayats, only 3 picked it up. Not fully successful. So you have to keep on. So now what we are doing is, along with SARS only, we are trying to create small little nudges, Okay, if you do this, this is how we're going to support you. If you want a school building, sanitation needs to be taken care of. It's a give and take, because that's a language which I think all of us very easily understand. So it's important as to how we keep on creating those small little, incentives and disincentives to promote the agenda of WASH, and do the agenda of WASH with a clear understanding that is it climate smart or not. I think that's See, somewhere, Natasha, this will automatically work. For example, what we're doing with Unilever, those Suvidha centers, as they call them, that's a good business model for them. You are actually improving the wash services being offered by a BMC, you know, community toilet. But what you're doing is you are creating a whole range of services around that, which people are ready to pay for. They value it. They value it in terms of time and in terms of effort, both, and money. So, so therefore, that's one thing that we are trying to scale it up. Like when you were talking about the mobile toilet at a truck terminal run by a self-help group, women's self-help group or a number of them, who also incidentally bring in a other range of services in terms of catering, etc., etc. So imagine a truck terminal typically in an industrial setup would have about 1 lakh truckers coming every day. So if you're creating good sanitation facilities for 1 lakh people at a particular place, and you turn it into a good business model for the local community to take benefit from that, I think you don't just need to simply replicate that model elsewhere. And so I'll stop at that.
This is collectively aim for. Use climate objective that is now so widely got circulated to our advantage as a country to mobilize more funds to come in and allow more at a low cost to come in. Those are the key factors, and I think the more we talk about it at our own groups, we achieve that goal faster.
Yeah.
So thank you on that.
Manoj, last point, I mean, what you very importantly said is till we have this, local market for the credits, we are forced to look at the US market. Today, we are talking to our licensors, and because I know the projects will come up and we want to monetize it day one. So we are finding a model to sell them in the US. But yeah, ideally, we should have it in India for a large
So
scale.
local CSR could buy it, local we could actually do it with your local corporates could do it, corporates could actually use when
Yeah, yeah. I said there are regulatory issues. Yeah, they want to develop it, but it'll be good when they develop it. But till then, we have no option. We have no option. On the commercialization, we spoke about the FSTKs, but we are talking on the more of the decentralized solutions that are come up. And these are more at the individual toilet levels, at the community levels, as well as the public toilet levels. Today, what we have is, if you are in a off-grid situation, you only have huge septic tanks which are created. And these septic tanks are just huge cost of construction in terms of concrete, and there's no treatment that's happening. And whenever there is, it's being emptied out, by and large, believe it is getting into the nearest landfill. So these, we have a whole range of projects and different technologies with commercial partners, which we are launching in India. And these are actually treating the entire water to be reused into the flushing system, as well as the solids being treated. Now, of course, these are fantastic in the sense that, of course, there are different technologies, different sizes, but we run some experiments here in East Delhi Municipal Corporation in the community toilet cluster, where we're using this technology to just treat all the water and the liquid. And earlier, they were needing about 1,000 square yard of land, which today we just need 116-feet container. It's been compressed. And the quality of the water is so clean that you can just push it back. We're running projects like this in Chennai, and because of the water bodies and lakes. So you discharge the water in the lake, which is absolutely clean, and up to NGT standards. Because today, if you look at India, I mean, we have a standard called NGT, but there is no technology which matches it. That's the unfortunate part. So we're trying to get close to that to do it. So at least with that endeavor, we should be able to clean up a whole lot of, the environment of discharging clean water, and most important, the circular economy of just having a self-filling. You don't need additional water for the washrooms. So that should be fantastic.
That's one reason why I like to talk to Sujoy. He's always 5 years ahead of us. So it's a pleasure to talk to you.
Another solid technology.
So thank you once again. When Natasha told me to moderate this session and she said you have 2 hours, I really thought either I was mad or she was mad. One of us was mad to have this proposition. I thought, why am I even taking a 2 hour? But thank you. This has been a very lively conversation. A lot of different elements touched upon, and we spent a good 2 hours on this. So. We never find solutions at a conference. So thank you once again, audience, and thank you for being part of the ISC conclave. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. I request everyone to go to the Harishankar Hall to attend the rest of the session. Thank you.